A large house made of wood, surrounded by trees.
Welcome to Twin Peaks The Gifted
and the Damned.
My name's Bubba. You can find me on Twitter at Fit and Trim. That's FITTENTRIM. At Fit and Trim on Twitter. And with me, as always, is somebody who's good friends with my buddy Chuck. But first, he's got to call Charlie, because Charlie's going to make a call to Ingrid. Ingrid, once she talks to Tony and Amanda, she'll find out about whether or not, hold on, screw you, Joe. What about Roland? Roland has problems with Liz and Caroline. And then, wait.
You can find Mork at Extraordinary. That's extraordinary with the W in front of the final R.
Hey,
Bubba,
Mork.
it's good to see you. Because,
it's good to see you.
And I hate to call you out on this, but you're a damned liar. I'm not always here. You're not always here. So
I know.
It's nice to be back in your amazing kitchen.
And we are going to break down Twin Peaks: The Return, Part 12. Let's rock.
Let's rock, baby.
This episode, we've gotten so much feedback. And we're going to get to almost all of the feedback in a bit, because we want to hear from everybody. But first, Mork, you did a great job on last week's podcast.
Oh,
I want to know
Thank you, Bubba.
Your ranking out of 10 for Twin Peaks: The Return, Part 12. Let's rock.
I gotta be honest. This might be my lowest ranking so far. I'm gonna give it 3 double E's.
Double E's?
Exhausting exits.
Oh, man.
Our poor friend. If I took that long to leave any building, any premises, and of course I'm talking. Is it Natalie? Natalie Cole's date in the hotel room.
I think she was just listed as French woman.
Okay, maybe
in
French
the credits, I believe, is how she was listed.
It's that slower than any sweeper. I cannot remember.
Slower than any sweeper. That's tough.
That was pretty slow. Bubba, you tell me. What did you think about quote unquote tonight's episode?
Part 12. Let's rock.
Yeah.
I am going to rate it higher than you.
Okay.
I'm going to give this 6, what I like to call triple P's out of 10.
Triple P's?
Well, triple P's, as you know if you work in advertising, it stands for poor product placement. Wendy's had poor product placement in this episode. It's tough to go have a Frosty or a Biggie Fries or a single with cheese when you've just shot Ward Murphy in the head in front of his son.
Right.
This episode, now, Mork, you gave this a 3.
I did.
And I want to say that
I did.
This episode had some scenes, and I'll get to them in a bit, but I'll just say it. Those 2 Sarah Palmer scenes, to me, those were so incredible. I watch those scenes, and I think to myself, David Lynch is a genius. He's a masterpiece. This is so strong and powerful. Oh, my goodness gracious. But then, in some of the scenes, which I believe you rated at a 3, I thought back to those sweeping scenes.
Sure.
Now, we got some great feedback, and I wish I remembered who said this to me. You know, I was real tough on the infamous more than 2 minutes of sweeping in the Roadhouse scene.
Yeah.
And somebody wrote on our Facebook page, facebook.com/double P podcast, the word double, the single letter P, the word podcast, plural. Somebody wrote to me and said they watched that sweeping scene, and they started breaking out laughing, and they enjoyed it so much. And let me say, they're correct. That's the right attitude. I wish I had that attitude, but that sweeping scene kind of drove me bonkers. And in this episode, Part 12, there were parts that really, honest to God, just drove me bonkers. And in one mind, you know, I see the Sarah Palmer scenes. I think David Lynch is a genius. I see some of these other scenes, and I think to myself, David Lynch thinks every single thing he's ever shot is brilliant and can't remove it. It makes me think back to the feedback we got many podcasts ago where we had a listener say David Lynch wanted Blue Velvet to be 4 hours long. And at the time, I was like, are you crazy? Blue Velvet was a practically perfect movie at its length, that he wanted to pad it out and fill it out. So we're going to get to all of that. as we dive into it. Listeners, because we're coming, normally this is an instant take podcast. We watch it on the side Sunday night and put it straight up. Because for various difficulties that probably no one cares about, we couldn't turn it around for a couple of days. But that means we got so much feedback. I want to get to that to the top. But before we get to the feedback, let's get to the iTunes reviews. For anybody who is new to Twin Peaks The Gifted
The Damned
podcast, we have given on podcasts dating back to before the return even started airing. We've been giving away a lot of great prizes. And when we reach that final night, which is just 6 hours of Twin Peaks away from now.
That's insane.
I know, that is insane. We're going to be giving away all of our remaining prizes. We will probably continue Twin Peaks The Gifted
and The Damned
after the return ends. We're certainly going to try to give the same type of coverage to Twin Peaks The Final Dossier, the new book coming from Mark Frost that we gave to his book that came out last year, Twin Peaks, The Secret History of Twin Peaks.
Yes.
And so we're going to do more. We might have to, I hate to say the words, go to Patreon to kind of raise some funds so we can kind of keep giving it up. But we'll give you more information about that as it goes. But anyway, back to these prizes. We give away prizes to people who are kind enough to do two things: to give us written iTunes reviews and go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/P podcasts, and like the page. So we got some great reviews this week. Let's get to them. Mork, where's our first one from?
Let's head over to the UK. This is from Lost Water.
All right.
It's a 5-star review
Thank you.
entitled A Large House Made of Wood, Surrounded by Cheese. You know a podcast is great when it typically begins with the greatest musical gift to grace human ears. I am, of course, referring to Just You by Good Kid James.
Aww.
In my job as a postman, I spend a lot of the day walking, and listening to these guys really makes the time fly. Such a perfect balance of knowledge and banter. Expertly produced, and not one aspect of the show is irritating in any way, shape, or form. Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. There
No
was a
pressure.
lie.
Double T's from me.
Oh, thank you.
2 thumbs up. How very cool.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
And Lost Water, you forgot a parcel for Mrs. Henderson down the street.
Way to torture a fine postal worker.
Kidding, of course.
So let's go all the way to the other side of this big planet of ours, to a place which I don't think showed up on the giant question marks map of Earth way back in Part 8. We're going to go to Australia, and we're going to get a great review from Doppel Greg from Oz. So Doppel Greg from Oz gives us a 5-star review. That's my kind of entertainment. Thank you so much. Double Greg writes, I recall as a young 15-year-old Australian watching Twin Peaks for the first time around and being captivated by the storytelling, quirky characters, and general uneasiness about the town. Something that was so different to anything else that was on TV at the time. Quote, it's happening again. The return has achieved the same feel 25 years later in a world where TV seems to be filled with captivating storytelling, quirky characters, and general uneasiness. How brilliant Mark Frost and David Lynch must be to out Frost and Lynch themselves. The only thing better than watching a new part is to listen to Mork and Bubba following morning on my way to work in car to dissect and analyze each and every scene, whether it's important to the overarching story being told or just Mark and David having fun with us. These guys' knowledge of the show, its history, and importantly, its meaning to us all shines through every week. You can count me as a double A.
Double A?
Australian admirer. Oh, my goodness gracious.
Hopefully you didn't have to take any time off of work, because we didn't get this posted up right away. But if you did, we will include a small recompense for...
We're 2/3 of the way through, Mork.
Yes.
Twin Peaks: The Return. Actually, that's a bit depressing in some ways. But then after this episode blew up the Twin Peaks fandom. Maybe in a good way, maybe in a terrible way.
Right.
Some people were really, really tough on it. Some people were really positive on it. I wrote a couple tweets that may not have gone over too well. I've said, well, maybe people are finding out that they don't like 18-hour movies. And then somebody said something else, and I was like, well, there's always a chance that this is an 18-hour movie.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean it's a good 18-hour movie, because people were really rough on it. You gave it the toughest rating ever.
Well, and I will say, just straight off the bat, there's at least a 3 double E demerit.
Okay.
Because I was a little disappointed, and I think a lot of us were. I was a little disappointed in Audrey's return.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to that. I think a bit of it also may be that I wasn't able to be with you for Part 11 podcast, Mork, but I think a lot of people love Part 11. And then you kind of run into some stuff here, and I think that's tough for people. I think it's natural to be tough for people. We want to be the podcast for all Twin Peaks fans, the one who loved everything in all of Part 12, and the people who, let's just be honest, gave us some of this tough feedback. That because we don't get to do feedback too often, we are going to just read a handful, and it feels like it may go on forever, but a handful of stuff we gotten on our Facebook page and on Twitter, just because we have such great double L's.
Double L's?
Loyal listeners that I think... I apologize, listeners, if this goes on a while, but I just want to get to as many as we can. On our Facebook page, Heather wrote, Part 12 started strong, but that long Audrey scene was disappointing.
Stefan Squirrel, that's a pity. I was waiting for your podcast to come online. Oh, boy, sorry about that. But, tell you what, mixed feelings. We understand it. We have them too, but we're gonna get into that. What does Thomas Clapper have to say?
Thomas Clapper, a great double L, writes, basically a bunch of nonsense.
Oh, man.
At this point, the story needs to move forward and fast. We are approaching the finish line. The only thing we found out was what the Blue Rose was. Audrey might have well have just had James has always been cool moment and been gone. Where the hell is James? 4.5 out of 10 after the first viewing. He gives it double H.
Double H.
Harsh honesty. Ooh, Thomas. Okay.
Nice. Caitlin writes, I'm still trying to be patient and let this show run its course before I get disappointed in how fast or slow it's moving, because I have a feeling it will all come together at the end. But it's definitely difficult when more and more names and stories are being thrown into the mix. Yeah, I kind of know what you mean there.
A true, wonderful double L, hunks lamb. I felt Albert's frustration in the scene with the lady that spoke a little French. For God's sakes, get on with it, ah! And the hard cut, too, and away from the Audrey scene was so harshly done. They write, I think intentionally so. Mm-hmm. No soft intro, no big reveal. That jarred me. I felt kind of pushed around by this part, so mixed feelings here, too. Ooh, I just keep reminding myself, it's just a movie. It's just a movie. It's
just an 18-hour movie. Tracy writes, I'm so happy to see Sarah and the scary ceiling fan. I don't even care about anything else. I second and third that. Absolutely.
Voltaire writes, Sarah Palmer scenes were creepy and great. Tremendous performance. The Blue Rose history was good. Rest of the episode was generally blah.
Oh, yeah. Chris writes, this was actually one of my favorite episodes. Awesome.
Yeah, right.
Interesting.
Good.
Love how the show is so polarizing. Also, I made a comment on one of your YouTube videos about how Agent TP, Tammy Preston, was being prepped to be part of Project Blue Book a while ago, and I was pretty much spot on.
You were, Chris.
Turns out I was wrong about the name. Will there be a podcast this week, or is it merely delayed? Well, we don't know. Hopefully there will be, but...
Kevin writes, loved the new season, but the Roadhouse, which used to be one of the best locations, has become a real drag. Whenever I see that Bang Bang Bar sign, I feel disappointment. Oh.
Well, if you've had their watered-down beer...
or if you've had any of those call girls that Jean-Michel Renault has been sending out that are apparently underage. Yeah, the Roadhouse can be... it's changed.
It's changed. Needs some more Bookhouse boys. Okay, Margie says, I gasped when Audrey suddenly appeared, but then noticed that her character was so off. Was she dreaming or in a coma? Was she wearing the green ring? Her accent has changed too. Why did she need her husband to go with her to find her boyfriend? His desk was so weird too. The items on it were so old-fashioned. The whole scene was strange and wrong.
Boy, we are going to jump into that big time in a bit. James writes, my ritual of starting my week of Twin Peaks podcasts with The Gifted and the Damned is broken this week.
And the Damned.
We apologize, James. He says Part 12 started strong and finished painful and confusing. Still just enough happening to move things along, but I thought it was a hard watch. Ooh, Angela Mills, another wonderful double L. What did Angela write?
Angela writes, it wasn't my favorite episode, but it could have been worse. How's that for a ringing endorsement?
That is the kind of ringing endorsement that everyone gets.
That's fair. Thank you, Angela.
A different Michael writes, I loved how much the first half of Part 12 relied so heavily on Twin Peaks and the original characters. Mm-hmm. But the half got pretty slow and barely any Coop. Also, I'm not sure if I like Audrey's entrance so late in the game with such a seemingly complicated story. Ooh.
Right. Okay. Let's see. MC Chang. Loved it. Amazed by all the complaints. Did they forget who's directing this thing? That's a good point.
I'm glad that you loved it. We had at Clobberchop on Twitter wrote, he gave the episode, Quintuple B's.
Quintuple B's?
Bad. Except for Sarah and the murder.
Oh, okay.
Oh, another guy I really like, Mark, on Twitter.
The one thing I took away from the Audrey scene, has Audrey become Catherine?
Yes.
Wow.
Has Audrey become Catherine, married to, maybe a kind of a fuddly guy, and then what do you think about that? And then kind of scold her.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, Catherine seemed to have some very specific goals and plans, and she had a lot going on. Audrey, I don't know what happened to Audrey. Maybe she is in a coma. Maybe this is all a dream. I don't know. Yeah. But she seemed to, Audrey's struggling.
Yes, she is. At Mallrat87, boy, what a great name. And that's Mall, M-A-U-L, Rat87, tweeted out, less strong than parts 10 and 11. I'm intrigued by the implication of timelines out of sync. And for God's sakes, they mentioned Chet Desmond. Woo!
That is definitely true. That is definitely awesome. Okay. This is from Seth. That one was 4 double Fs.
Double Fs?
Flirty French women.
Ooh.
Comma, tops. Ooh, ouch. Actually, real quick, Dave Driscoll writes, believe that scene plays over and over again for Charlie and Audrey. It's Charlie's way of keeping Audrey from psychotic episodes. Maybe. I don't think he's doing such a great job.
No, Charlie may have given the audience psychotic episodes. We have at Seth Taco Bell wrote, I'm now fully caught up on Twin Peaks. Can't wait to start the new series, More Cooper. Boy, you picked a real interesting week to start the new series when everybody's so tough. We had one, I accidentally deleted the listener's name, but they said, tonight, Twin Peaks was easily the most frustrating episode of the series thus far, which is to say, I loved it.
Hey!
Utter discomfort at moments. Okay. And then we had a great bit of feedback. Is it from Macon? I wanted us to read. Well, how do you read that, Macon?
I'm gonna suggest Macon Fowerskoff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. All right, let's give it a shot. Hey, guys. I'm listening to your Twin Peaks Gifted
and the Damned
podcast and loving it. But I just want to come with one complaint. Where are your special guests in your newer podcast? I gave you a review in the Danish iTunes where I praised that particular feature, and I really think it is a shame you got rid of it. Bring back Harold. Otherwise, I like listening to you, and keep up the good work. Sincerely, Macon from Denmark. Oh,
thank you so much, Macon.
Thank you very much. Now, and tonight, you, Macon, are our special guest. So thanks for joining us.
That's true. Macon's referring to all those podcasts we did before the return started out. Listeners, if you haven't gone out and downloaded some of those the return podcasts, I think you'll really enjoy them. We dive into a bunch of stuff. Admittedly, we speculate on what's going to happen in the return. You'll be able to laugh at us being wrong. But really, a lot of them are on the original series on Firewalk with Me and just on thoughts and essays we came up with. And to be honest, once the return ends, once again, if we may have to go to Patreon, I apologize, but we'll probably ask you for some ideas of things you want us to research and then maybe do essays on and stuff.
We will get there. All right, Bubba. Where are we starting? Now, one thing that I do want to say, in spite of my very, very harsh rating, one thing that I do want to say was I enjoy that we did spend a lot of time in Twin Peaks proper.
We sure as heck did.
I was glad
so
about
do you want
that.
to start there so we start on a positive note on this podcast? Or do you want to end there so we end on a positive note?
I'd prefer to end there if that's all right with you, Bubba.
Okay, so let's do it. So let's go to Vegas. Vegas, I think a lot of people have been enjoying in recent weeks, but there was just one fleeting glimpse in Vegas, and that was Sonny Jim and Cooper playing the all-American sport of hit your dad in the face.
Yes. I now refer to him as DougieCoop Town. And that's all we get, basically.
A funny little moment, almost like a Simpsons gag, almost.
It's a Simpsons. It is a good moment. It definitely. It's. But the issue.
Or is it frustrating that it's still DougieCoop and not Cooper?
Well, since we're 2/3 of the way through, yeah, that is a little frustrating. Number one, and number two, I'm very curious about what is going on. He's back at work. I assume Anthony Sinclair's plan has been foiled. I assume the Mitchum brothers have all their money back. Where's Candy?
Where is Candy? We'll
Candy?
always ask that.
Yes. You know me well, Bubba. But there was a lot of that I was really curious about that we didn't get to cover in Las Vegas. So hopefully those storylines will come back, because I am getting into those. I am finding them enjoyable, and now I want to know. So I don't want them, as much as I complained about them before. I miss them.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I have, even one of our the return podcast, I coined the term double L.
Double L.
Languid Lynch, because I'm like, sometimes he likes to, this was before the return. I was like, sometimes Lynch really likes to have scenes drag on too long. Mm-hmm. That Vegas scene, that didn't drag on.
No.
It had one point. It hit that point somewhere on DougieCoop's head, and then it moved on. So I like that moment.
I read in one of the production blogs that it took them 92 takes to do that scene.
Oh, that would be oh, really? You were kidding?
I'm kidding, Bubba.
Who would have guessed?
Every once in a while.
It would have been great if somehow DougieCoop had a glass bottle on his head and it tied back to the rock throwing incident when Andy got hit in the head with the rock,
That would have been cool. I was actually thinking a little bit about that when we get back to Twin Peaks. I'm glad you brought that up.
All right, yeah.
But we'll get there. So we covered Las Vegas.
Yeah, we covered Las Vegas. We're done with that location. How about we go to what I have to say must be the nicest, possibly
Holiday
only.
Inn.
No, this ain't no Holiday. This is the Great Northern of Buckhorn, whatever this hotel is. I'm sorry, I can't recall it right here at the top.
It was the Mayfair.
This is the Mayfair. That's right. This is the Great Northern of Buckhorn.
It's beautiful.
So where the Great Northern is by the beautiful falls, there in Twin Peaks, the Mayfair is right next to the interstate.
Yeah, well, your tax dollars at work, Bubba. That's what I have to say.
They are. Okay, so let's get to it. This beginning scene starts this episode. I tweeted it out. I thought it started incredibly strong. We're going in. Gordon has his device to see if anybody's wearing a wire, if the room is mic'd. Then we immediately jump into, we're going to tell you, Tammy Preston, a.k.a. audience, what the Blue Rose is all about. How did you feel about this scene? How do you feel about the reveal of the Blue Rose after all these years?
Well, I don't think the Blue Rose it's not as interesting as I thought. We knew what Project Blue Book was, and so Blue Rose is not really much different than that in terms of where we are and what they're trying to accomplish. I do want to just point out, and I'm sure a lot of folks at home notice this, but they're seated in front of some beautiful deep red curtains that are just hanging on the wall.
Even the wall, though, behind Albert on the sofa here, the couch here, it's painted like a dark ruby red, the color of that fine wine from Gordon's private collection.
Yes.
I want to say, full transparency here on Twin Peaks: The Gifted
and the Damned
is that when Firewalk with Me came out all those years ago, and I went at midnight on opening night and then saw it the next weekend in a theater too, my first thought was, oh, well, obviously Laura was the Blue Rose, and people like Laura's Blue Rose. Here she's a beauty, and she's dead, a.k.a. Blue.
Aww.
So that was my first thought. I did come around to, okay, obviously this means something special. But I want to get to a critique of this scene. I gave it 6 out of 10. I rated this part higher than you did, Mork. But this show, I think, whatever you think about actress Christabel's acting abilities, the singer Christabel's acting abilities, and I was certainly tough on Chet Desmond, a.k.a. Chris Isaac, the singer turned actor in Fire Walk with Me. But they don't ever give her any lines.
Right.
This could have been and I hate to say it, what I think when it's really Frost and Lynch's real party here. I think if you had made Agent Preston into somebody we love like Cooper and really given her stuff to do, really, it almost feels like the only thing she's really done, she's investigated the glass box mystery off screen, and then she had a pretty good interrogation scene with Hastings. But she doesn't do anything. Even in this, she doesn't get to talk much. And so she's almost like a non-entity at times, and I think that hurts this scene.
It feels like a little bit of, exposition catch-up and into things that I don't know if we really need to understand the mechanics of, Blue Book versus Blue Rose.
Maybe, how about, let me throw out another pitch. Because this kind of point that Albert makes, which I believe is a powerful point about, there was Agent Jeffries, there was Agent Cooper, there was Chet Desmond, there was me. When Albert makes that point about, hey, I'm the only one who hasn't vanished into thin air, it's either like, boy, you don't want to jinx yourself, Albert, or I was really thinking, because that moment almost feels like it comes almost verbatim from Tammy's notes in Mark Frost's book, The Secret History of Twin Peaks, it didn't hit me as hard.
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, I wasn't actually thinking about that, but you're completely right. Agent TP, who the dossier is written for in the book, The Secret History, she's obviously part of the investigation, and so this is not a big revelation for anybody
who had read that book. Yeah,
exactly. Who'd read the book, and one thing that it made me think about was just because of the nature of Cole sharing some of what he knows, and the fact that they've lost people. Do you think, are they really welcoming Tammy into the fold, or is she going to be a bit of bait, maybe, or is she a plant, or is she a decoy of some sort?
Maybe because the reason why your thoughts just connected with me so hard right then, Mork, is because I have had trouble, because I haven't developed Tammy, in my opinion, to be this kind of character who could stand on her own. Maybe that does strike a chord with me. Like, oh, hey, let's get some bait. Let's get somebody out here who could, I don't know, who could draw some of these evil forces towards us.
Right, another pawn in a bigger game that we don't really know what it is. So they have their celebration, but they're not done celebrating because
we've got to have another member of the team.
That's true. We need another member of the team.
The Scooby Gang needs one more. And so
the Scooby Gang also often took advantage of fine Bordeaux, scotch, and cigarettes.
Right. So let's break it down. Shaggy is Gordon. Fred is Albert. We have Tammy Preston.
Is Tammy Velma?
Yeah, this is a tough call. Is she Velma or Daphne?
Yeah.
But then we have Diane brought in. And this...
Here we go.
This, boy... Besides her parting the curtains, as we're so familiar with, and her saying the infamous "Let's rock," which is such a weighted expression in this world, dating back at least to Chet Desmond's car when he disappeared a year before Laura was even killed.
Right.
Diane, this is something that I'm still having trouble getting my head around. One of the theories I've kind of come up with myself is it possible that on that infamous night that Diane referenced when she was interviewing Mr. C in the prison, that Mr. C brought her into what we would call the Black Lodge, and he came out with her doppelganger, her dark side? Because I'm just having trouble processing everything, all the pieces of Diane. We obviously don't know that yet.
We definitely don't know, and I don't have a clear theory. Well, I don't have a clear theory for anything, but
that's what the listeners are for. You guys provide that part of the content for us.
But it almost feels like, other than Albert, Albert, he's what you see is what you get. Coop seems to be playing Cole seems to be playing a little bit of a double game. Tammy, we don't know that well. Is she really in? Is she a plant? And Diane, is she really in cahoots with Mr. C? She's texting with him. She's communicating with him. But maybe this is her way of trying to help, the real Coop. some way, somehow. There's so much we don't know about her
Right.
that I'm keeping hope alive with her.
Keeping hope alive.
I'm not writing her off at all, and I think Laura Dern is doing a great job, and although sometimes she reminds me of how my mother dressed at my bar mitzvah.
Okay, well, Mork, with your noting that Diane is getting these late-night texts from
Yes.
Mr. C,
Yes.
I'm just waiting for her to get one that reads, "You up?" No, I'm kidding, but this is just, I'm going to go off on a little tangent
Do
here
it.
again. And that is, you know what, I'm going to hold off.
Oh, that's below the belt. That's cool.
Okay, I'll get to it. So, Twin Peaks superfan John Thorne, one of the guys who created Wrapped in Plastic, the fanzine that really kept the fandom alive throughout all the 90s in that dark period. When he saw Fire Walk with Me, we talked about it on one of our podcasts. They were actually, for a Twin Peaks fanzine, their first issue included a review of Fire Walk with Me, which was really tough, which pointed out some of the flaws that I kind of thought Fire Walk with Me had too. Mm-hmm. Later, John came up with this theory about, well, maybe Chester Desmond and the whole Deer Meadow segment was just a dream that Cooper had, and that's why it kind of doesn't make sense. That's why it doesn't flow. But the point was, John was coming up with this theory. Why? Because he really kind of wasn't that happy with that part of the movie.
Sure.
And so I was kind of thinking, how often have I done that? Mm-hmm. A couple of parts ago, boy, I always want to say part. I apologize that I say episode. But a couple of parts ago, we had that infamous ending scene of the girl with the rash on her armpit. And I'm talking, and I'm like, maybe this rash is showing how bad Sparkle is in the Twin Peaks community and some of the side effects. That was all on me. Mm-hmm. There was nothing in the show to say, I developed this rash under my arm because I had Sparkle. And I realized after we did that podcast, I was like, that's a bit like, I'm doing a bit like John. That part of that end scene of that part, I didn't like. And, I kind of thought, what was the point? I couldn't connect with the characters. We had just met them. They're talking in code about zebras and penguins, one scratching her arm. And so there I was trying to kind of come up with a reason to put my own interest into the scene. And so sometimes I think that's where theories come from. Mm-hmm. I don't think this is one of those times. I think this is one of those times where there must be something more to Diane, and so it is. I'm desperately trying to think of it because I want to know. I think that's a good sign about the return, that there are moments like this where I want to know, as opposed to times that, for me, armpit rash girl, where it's me almost doing the work that the show didn't do to get myself interested in it, which is kind of a tough tangent to go on. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, I do hear what you're saying, and I would maybe just differentiate a little bit between someone like Diane, who we've known about for the past 25 years and being really curious about what her motives are and why, and a couple of people who were just meeting at the Roadhouse one random night. And
okay, well, but yeah, no, that's what I was saying. There should be some separation between.
So there's a little bit, and the one thing that just in terms of, to the extent, and there's a lot of people, and some of the folks who gave us feedback, before we started recording tonight, is are talking about how Frost and Lynch are sort of responding to what television has become today, mm-hmm. and how people view television and experience it. And a lot of what television has become today is just thinking about, well, what does this mean and what does that mean, and sort of putting the pieces together. Obviously, Game of Thrones is a big part of
the original text was filled with clues to kind of foreshadowing clues, and so
exactly. So maybe this is just their way of throwing some red herrings out there to get us going, and maybe they're just trying to say, hey, just focus on what you're seeing, and maybe don't do what we're all doing, but we can't help it.
No, we can't help it. And so let's get to one of these interactions, these late night texts. Diane gets a text while she's drinking in the bar. Now, if this happened chronologically, she had some wine with the Blue Rose crew. Right. Then she went down and said, I guess I need a martini. Is that what that is? She's like, she doesn't stop drinking. And she gets this text from you-know-who says Las Vegas ? Then she responds in all caps, they haven't asked yet.
And so, well, what do you think he's asking about in terms of Las Vegas? Like, have they talked about Las Vegas? Are they going to Las Vegas? What do you think he's touching on? Assuming this is Mr. C.
If this is Mr. C, I assume that, and once again, if this is happening in any sort of chronologically close times, I think Mr. C must know that if he's had failed attempts on the character we're calling DougieCoop, that's going to... The FBI is going to find out about that soon. Vegas is a very popular city with cameras everywhere, not just by casinos. There's a lot of attention on that city. And so my only thought was just that obviously Mr. C knows that I needed to take care of this immediately. When good, quote-unquote, normal Cooper came out of the lodge, I didn't. It's going to get to the FBI quickly. Have they asked yet? That's the way I saw it, that interaction.
It's going to get to the FBI quickly because why? I mean, it hasn't yet. So what do you think Mr. C is? Well,
do you think Mr. C knows that Cooper came out of the Black Lodge and has the memory and disposition of a 4-year-old? Don't you think he could have thought, Cooper could come out and be normal and suddenly start?
Right. I feel like he should know that. I mean, he seems to be sort of playing. He knows a lot of the loopholes of Black Lodge membership that he's definitely taken advantage of.
Well, how about this? If they had, sorry to cut you off there, but how about this? His plan was to kill Dougie Jones / DougieCoop. The entity in that.
Right, but there's only one of them there.
True, but wouldn't that death have suddenly got Dougie Jones or DougieCoop's fingerprints and announcements into some sort of, okay, this guy's dead, and that's a way they would have found out about him, maybe? Well, I'm just throwing stuff out.
I don't really know. It would track that Dougie Jones would have the same fingerprints as Mr. C because that's how they ID'd Mr. C as Coop. Was through that. So it could be, but nothing has. Actually, you know what? I completely forgot about the fact that he was on the news. He was on the news when he when
that's
Ike
why
the Spike attacked him.
Right. That's why I was saying if this is chronologically kind of happening at the same time.
Right.
We're still in doubt about that. But
and this is an example of we don't exactly know what the mechanics are of lodge membership. So we don't really know when something has gone wrong because we don't know what's supposed to happen in terms of what Mr. C's plan is. So we're just going to have to stay tuned. But it does make me, on the one hand, it makes me a little bit nervous for Dougie Cooperstown. But it also, if this leads to a reunion with Diane, maybe that will wake up our boy in Vegas. I don't know.
Oh yeah, we don't know what's going to flip that switch to get Cooper back, if anything.
If that happens at all.
That's right.
If it happens at all.
Do you want to go up to a very private moment between a man and a lovely former Bond girl in his hotel room? It's 11:50. Do you know where your French friend is?
I don't know where my French friend is. I don't know where my deputy FBI director is. Again, these are our tax dollars at work, people.
The FBI.
I just want to point this out. Although, of course, in South Dakota...
Is Jeff Sessions paying attention to this?
Yes, he is on the case. There is something about Albert that the next time, and this is just one of the many reasons why we're going to miss Albert, but... next time I buy a car, can you imagine walking in there with Albert? Like you would get the best deal ever.
He's not gonna fall for any
no
winterizing
manager special, no clear coat. Albert,
all right, so we are talking about other stuff than getting to the thing that really drove you crazy, Mork. Mm-hmm. Once again, I believe she's
we've got
listed
about 4 minutes.
She was listed in the credits as French woman. I almost think David Lynch is David Lynch, and those of us who had problems with this scene are the ones when Gordon tells Albert, I worry about you, man. It's like, is he talking about us? Here we have a scene, and I'll go the pro side of this, which I didn't necessarily feel, but I still want to argue it. Here you have this very cute, attractive, lovely actress, and she's acting flirty, she's acting fun. Gordon is loving it. why are we as an audience, why don't we just kind of give in to that and go along with it and say, oh, this is cute, this is fun. Why don't we appreciate it? Why are we so pushed to, let's get on with it. I want to say that's the argument for it, but I also then it's time to admit I didn't feel it. I was feeling like Albert. I was like, we have big things happening,
exactly.
And why are we watching this? That was my honest thought.
Yeah, if we were watching this little show before Albert showed up, I'd be right there with you. But fast talking big city Albert walks in. He's got something to say. He's going to say it, and he can't say anything while we have a civilian hanging out. So that is for me. I mean, that was the main reason. I mean, there's a lot of Albert does not mince words. He's always got something important to say, and we're just waiting for this sweet, lovely lady to vamoose.
Is there any chance, and this goes to the point I was talking about before, and I'm going to keep bringing it up. I've heard people say, well, is this routine? Is the joke, the turnip joke that Gordon makes once she finally leaves, is this a bit of a fire walk with me Lil situation where she was giving us codes? And to that I say, it's my own thought when I read people kind of pitching out that idea that was just like me and the Rash, trying to, the audience doing the work to kind of make the scene have more meat than maybe is really there. I would also say that, say 2 parts from now, we find out that, oh, wait a minute, this French woman leaving, she was a lot of coded messages. Mm-hmm. Would it retroactively make the 6 or so 7 minutes that this scene took enjoyable? Like, would you watch this again? Would you be like, oh, this is enjoyable because it's code, or would you still be that frustrated me?
Yeah, I would still be frustrated because there's nothing she's doing that is making me wonder, gee, why is she putting on her shoes? She's putting on her shoes because she's leaving. Everything she's doing is like, okay, she's just taking her sweet time. And if that's the code, then they can. I mean, if she was transmitting a code right there and there was an emergency, she'd be dead because that took about 10 minutes.
Well, Lil and fire walk with me. She had to stomp in place. She had to make a sour face.
That is
blink
true.
Her eyes.
But in the moment there was nothing urgent going on. So we'll find out. But who would the code be for between these are 2 members of Blue Rose Task Force? So,
well, okay, once again, I guess to go on the pro side of the scene or the length of the scene or the languid lynchedness of the scene, it would you wouldn't be able to reveal that until you had the scene in Fire Walk with Me, that after the little scene where Chet breaks it down for Agent Sam Stanley.
Not all of it.
That's a good point. Not all of it. He needed Sam Stanley to come get a glass of wine with everybody here in South Dakota. And so, I don't know. They bring up, let's leave the French woman. She left. Yeah. Let's move on to what Albert was so desperate to talk about. Mm-hmm. The text we saw Diane get down at the bar.
Yeah.
Now they're talking about it. And they're trying to figure out, okay, well, what haven't we asked her about that we know we should ask her about? And this is the kind of crazy kind of hijinks. Not hijinks isn't right, but the kind of spy thrillerness, I guess, of it. Did you enjoy this? What do you think about the end of the scene, quote unquote, the meat of the scene?
Well, so Albert shares that, and Cole, says, okay, well, I don't know what that means exactly. We'll figure it out. And then he just sort of goes back to it. So I'm at this point, I'm wondering, does Albert think something's wrong with Cole? And also, the scene ends. Cole tells Albert that he's worried about him, and that always feels like if we're talking about spy movies, of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Oh, okay.
Like there's always a little bit of the mole or the plant is the one to basically sort of put I don't know, you call it a hero, but basically put the detective off a little bit by bringing them in, bring them close. They're obviously extremely close because they've known each other for 30 years at this point. So it feels like even they, alone in this room in South Dakota, aren't being completely truthful, with each other. And I can't help but wonder why Albert, who is so blunt, why he just doesn't if he does suspect Cole, well, why wouldn't he just call him out on it? I mean, Albert's not going to stand on ceremony. He's not afraid to speak his mind.
Not after the relationship these guys have built. You wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
I want to throw out yet another thing. Listeners, we've been bringing up a lot of points. Once again, go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/double-P-podcast. Tell us what you think. Let us know what you think. But I want to throw out another thing, another thought I've had over the last couple of parts. Once again, I love part 11, tougher on part 12. But one of the things I've been thinking about, Mork, and that is in the original series, apologies for me even bringing it up to some people who want us to say focus on the return, but in the original series, Albert and Gordon were like spices.
Mm-hmm.
They were like spices
That's
in
a
the
great
show.
point. Yeah.
Where they could come in and spice up a scene and then get out of the way.
Right.
Where, quote-unquote, the full dish of Agent Cooper or whomever was leading us as the audience through these great adventures.
Sure.
Now, in the return, in a lot of ways, Albert and Gordon, the spices, are now the meal.
They're much
and
bigger.
Is this the best way to tell the story? And I kind of wonder about it. I have thought a couple of times, and I loved both these characters in the original, but part of me wonders if they would work still better as spices. That's just my own thought. Listeners, if you disagree, hey, feel free to disagree. Write us on our Facebook page. What do you think about that thought, Mark?
Oh, I think that Cole is we're getting way too much of Cole. I could watch if we would watch Albert, flossing his teeth in the morning. I'd be totally fine with that. Part of the reason why I'm totally fine with Albert is seeing much more of Albert, because in some ways he is the closest. We don't have Harry,
right?
We have Hawk, but really the guys that were closest. To Coop, were Harry was one, and,
right.
and Albert was another. Just because historically he knew exactly what was going on in the larger case in terms of finding the killer and Ronette's killer or Ronette's attacker. So I'm okay if we're not going to have Coop. I'm okay with having Albert's sort of a stand-in for him in my mind, and I'm totally fine with that. But I think Cole's bits. We know his bits. We see him regularly. They're. I think we're going to those that well. A few too many times. But, yeah. But let's. I would love to hear. Maybe someone else has a complete opposite perspective.
Yeah, we love
and,
opposite perspectives.
And Coop, and Albert is wasting their time. So let's definitely let us know.
I guess this slightly, totally tangential to this about Albert though. Albert in the original series was the guy who would say things like, has anybody seen Bob on Earth? And so I wonder when exactly Albert became part of the Blue Rose team, because in that original series, any
super
mumbo-jumbo stuff,
right.
he would totally discount. The Albert we're seeing here in the return, he's willing to accept all this stuff.
Yeah, he is totally on board with it. And, I'd be willing to buy that his job in the original Blue Rose Task Force was to be the scientific
Scully.
one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's
okay.
exactly it. So, yeah, but I'm going to believe anything Albert says. So,
hey, do you want to go to the other side of the state, of the lovely state of South Dakota, and see how my boy, the guy who's really the lead? Albert
sure.
and Gordon may be spices.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure the warden...
Dave Thomas, the founder of Wendy's?
No, not Dave. Yeah, we're going to get to him in a second. R.I.P. Dave Thomas. Boy, that's an old man. But let's get to Warden Murphy, the real hero of this series. So in the past, we had heard that Bill Hastings' secretary's car had been taken care of, and then we were told, hey, it blew up. I know that kind of freaked a lot of people out. Like, oh, wait a minute. Suddenly the car blew up? We didn't. You're telling us, not showing us?
Yeah.
I kind of went the other way. Suddenly like, oh, wait, we actually have to see Shanal and Hutch kill Warden Murphy? I kind of just assumed it would happen.
Yeah.
But it did give us this delicious double burger stack from Wendy's. What do you think? What do you think of Shanal and Hutch? What do you think of kind of the spin, the very Lynchian spin on this scene of them talking about, a trip to fast food, something completely low stakes, nothingness, with a son seeing his dad being shot to death, or the remains of his dad after his dad's been shot several times. What did you think of this scene? Did you like it? Did you love it? Let's hear it.
Well, I was okay with it, but I was thinking well, how does what is Mr. Strawberry? I mean, that was Mr. C had warned the warden about Mr. Strawberry, and that meant something. So
do you think we'll ever know now?
No, and I don't know.
And are you frustrated by that? Because you're mentioning it. Are you frustrated?
Well, it's just one of those things where if there was a reason, why, Mr. C, again, remember Mr. C when he was being interrogated, he also set himself free with the magical calculator he carries around.
Right.
So yes, Ray was sent to that prison, but Mr. C is so, he seems to be in some ways so far ahead of everyone else that, maybe there was a sort of an extra reason. Why Warren Murphy? Why that prison? But, we're not going to get it. That's okay. It's fun to see, the great Tim Roth and the wonderful Jennifer Jason Leigh murder a helpless old man.
James Morrison, I believe that's the name of the actor who plays Warden Murphy. R.I.P. Warden Murphy.
R.I.P.
Let's pour one out from him for him. Excuse me. Let's give it up to him. So, Mork.
I'm about to. That's what I was born to do.
Oh, give it up, Mork.
I just said I'm about to.
So that's all our time in South Dakota.
I don't think that's all our time in South Dakota.
Sorry.
We get to see Diane one more time. Don't hide Diane.
Right. Sorry.
From me.
So take us through that last Diane scene.
Well, so Diane is doing a little bit of a Google search
on the coordinates that were on Ruth's arm. Plot check me, everybody. I want to make sure I'm getting this right.
Yeah.
On Ruth Davenport's arm
had her headless body.
Had the infamous coordinates that we thought Hastings' secretary had. Ignore all that. Let's just get to it. She puts in the coordinates. Shock.
Yeah.
It's in Twin Peaks.
So this is
why would Mr. C need those coordinates? He came out in Twin Peaks.
Yeah,
he kind of knows about Twin Peaks.
You would think. Or
is it a different spot in Twin Peaks? Is it this Jackrabbit's Palace as opposed to maybe the Glastonbury Grove?
That is certainly possible. But it does seem like if there is one place where Mr. C would think to look, it would be, the place nearby, at least, the place that he had emerged. So I guess a different question that I'm thinking about. So that was question number one.
Okay.
How could Mr. C not know that? Number one. Number two, does this mean that we're on the flip side? The Black Lodge being an entrance or an exit. If there is a different kind of, for lack of a better term, doorway in the same spot, does it change our perspective? How does that affect our perspective on which reality this is? Now, I've sort of given up on the multiple dreams and the all of that stuff. I feel like this is being told as straight as it could be. I mean, not to say that it's being told straight. David Lynch did make a movie called The Straight Story. This isn't it, people. But it did make me think a lot about about Diane. You see the realization on her face and what that might mean. Mm-hmm. Maybe Diane thought that Mr. C was Coop all along, and now she's realizing that he's not. I don't know, but it's a big moment. It's sort of unexpected that it's taken us there, but I sure as heck hope that it's going to get everyone going to Eastern and or Western Washington State. So and quick. But
let's.
Should we go there now?
Should we go to Twin Peaks there? You're saying should we get out of the woods and get into Twin Peaks like a certain Horn brother who spent several episodes in the woods? Is this the quote-unquote resolution to the Jerry Lost in the Woods plot? The first thing we see in Twin Peaks?
Well,
Jerry's running free. The hills are alive.
I mean, we will need to be plot checked a little bit. So the Jerry thread, has this now been resolved? We will find out.
Well, do you have any thoughts about? Are you happy Jerry's free. Who knows if he's anywhere near town still? But
he's on the other side of the mountain.
Right.
He's in Alberta, Canada. I have no idea.
Well, are you happy he's out of the? I mean, I guess you're saying you can't even feel happiness that Jerry's out, or
that he's not talking to his foot anymore. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I guess I wanted something from you, and it's fine if you've got nothing. I'm just saying that has played out for a while.
Yes, it has.
We could speculate on what it means, but once again, I feel like we'd be trying to put something into the show that the show hasn't provided for us.
Right.
So.
And the only thing that, we really would be Jerry saw an owl-like creature.
Oh, that's a good call. That's a good call. That's a tie back to Mark Frost's The Secret History of Twin Peaks book, too.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of.
This brief scene of Jerry Horne coming out of the woods reminds me of a story, one of the few stories we heard the actors were allowed to tell, and David Patrick Kelly, the actor, wonderful actor who plays Jerry Horne, before Twin Peaks The Return was out, he was always talking about this scene where he was like, I was really far away, and David Lynch was yelling, action, action, action. And then finally he's like screaming, action, why aren't you moving? And David Patrick Kelly had to tell him, my hearing isn't what it used to be. You really got to yell. And I wonder if it was this scene because of that super wide shot of Jerry emerging
from the woods.
Back to our world. Someone who I've been tough on this part. I've been tough at times throughout this return. I want to get positive. We're in Twin Peaks. I want to get positive, and I want to say this scene in the supermarket. There's another scene we're going to get to in a sec with Sarah at her house, but this scene of Sarah Palmer, the wonderful Grace Zabriskie, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, in the supermarket. This was everything. I saw this scene, and once again, I'm like, David Lynch is a genius. The mood he can set with this, the tragedy. Now, I want to, we don't talk about Frost enough on Twin Peaks The Return. In all our earlier podcasts, before The Return was back, we talked about Frost a lot. But I do want to give Frost credit in why David Lynch, in this scene in the supermarket with Sarah Palmer grabbing all this liquor, living her sad life, one of the reasons why it's so powerful is because of the work Frost did in creating her, the tragedy of her life back in the original series. And that's partially why this scene is so powerful, why this scene just kind of, knocked my socks off. I enjoyed it so much. How did you get the same feeling from this? Or what were your thoughts?
I think, speaking of characters that, were a spice and now are a little bit more of a main dish, in the original series, I felt that Sarah was almost, overused. As great as a job as I think she did,
I never thought that. I kind of feel the opposite, but okay, keep going.
Yeah, I felt like she could have rang some bells earlier, and she didn't. So anyway. But let's jump ahead 25 years, and I think in The Return, she's completely underused, and we haven't spent too much time in Twin Peaks. Hopefully, that's going to change a lot, over these next 6 parts. But she really does bring. You look at her and exactly what's happened in her life, what she's trying to, the pain that she's trying to cover up with all of those Bloody Marys.
Oh yeah,
and it's still with her, and in that pain, the pain that she carries around with her has not gone away, obviously, and that's heavy stuff.
And is there where this wonderful music that I remember it from Fire Walk with Me and Philip Jeffries, this wonderful music that happens, are more supernatural kind of horrors happening to Sarah Palmer when she says this line, "Were you here when they came?"
Right.
When they first came, which is, of course, not referring to when the turkey first came at all. Turkey first came at all. That is so powerful. Her delivery of it, incredible acting and incredible performance. Once again, the sound design by Lynch, the contrast between, I hate to point out some of the tough acting, but in some ways, this really reminds me of the mother when she got hit, her son got hit and killed by Richard Horne. It was that you had those extras who were trying to react because a child just got killed, and they couldn't cover it. In this scene, the bag boy, God bless him, I don't want to call anybody out, but I kind of thought his acting was so amateurish, and maybe that's how somebody would really react, but it was such a contrast to Sarah, the sound, what I feel is supernatural forces still haunting her. You know, it's a short scene, but man, this is what I almost expected.
Well,
don't expect anything in Twin Peaks: The Return. This is what I expected. These are the kind of moments
exactly. Well,
that I thought The Return would be filled with.
Right. I'm rarely completely on board with what you just said, and I think one of the things, supernatural or not. She's always going to be haunted by the fact of what her husband did to her daughter. Why she's still in that house, I don't know.
This is something, I don't want to say anything, but when we'll skip the trailer park scene for a second and just
the anti-Red Cross scene.
Right. We'll follow up with Hawk going to check on Sarah Palmer. You look at this grass on the Palmer's house. Well, why is she still living in this cursed place?
Yeah,
is a great question.
She's definitely let it go a little bit. A couple things. One, I just wanted to finish the thought from earlier. At the very in episode 14 or 15 of the original series, when they're trying to explain, and Coop says, "Well, is Bob that much more hard to comprehend than a man raping and killing his own daughter?" And so, supernatural or not, she's still haunted by everything. And we're back, and somebody said it on the feedback page, and when I saw it, I was super psyched and a little bit nervous too. But man, when you see that ceiling fan, and you hear that music, oh man, we're back. And
but this is I hate to say it because I love this scene so much. This is a bit of a little kind of a knock against The Return. Is these moments have weight because of what the original series did. Mm-hmm. It's not something new like DougieCoop or the Casino Brothers. This is something pulling on, quote unquote, the nostalgia of what these symbols mean, what they mean.
Well,
the history. It's pulling on the history. It's not something The Return is built from scratch.
For sure, but I'm okay with that just because when you have a show that's coming back after 25 years, I think it's very unlikely that things that are created, right now that don't tie into the original story are ever going to have the same weight. So I'm okay with them relying on that weight a little bit. But that being said, what else that is not directly connected to the original series has anything near as much weight as this?
I would say that I'll just follow this lead. Listeners, I think this is a good question. Go to our Facebook page and let us know. I would say that how's this? It's not on the same kind of weight here anyway, but I think the audience in the original series certainly had a very strong attachment to some of these kind of one-off minor comical characters. Mm-hmm. And I think people like Candy really has kind of grabbed in, like, okay. I think your feelings maybe towards Hank Jennings in the original series, that kind of has been somewhat created with Chad. You're kind of like, oh, good grief, this Chad guy.
Right.
If you really hated Leo, especially in that first season, when he's beating his wife with soaps and socks and that kind of stuff, you do hate Richard Horne just as much. So The Return has built
Stephen and the Mitchum brothers, similar to the Horne brothers.
So the Return has built some things, but nothing close to the ceiling fan. Nothing close to this.
Right. I think in terms of it, in an imagery standpoint, and look, we're in part 12. At this point. So
but once again, to play devil's advocate, in the original series, we had spent less hours and we had a million kind of things built in. We had a million things that we were really attached to.
Yeah,
in less time. I believe the audience was attached to more things than in The Return. It's tough because The Return.
They introduce things and they never go back to them. So it's hard to get connected to them.
Well, let's get back to the episode. Yeah. We're going off on tangents. Hopefully you listeners enjoy it. If you don't, hey, feel free to tell us. We love dissenting opinions. Hawk goes to check up on Sarah Palmer, and I have had questions about the cops throughout a lot of these episodes. In this moment, when he hears that noise in the kitchen, maybe he doesn't have a legal way to go into the house, but I'm thinking, Hawk, go into the freaking can't go into the house. What are you doing?
Yeah, I kind of wished he would have, but I really did like the scene. I like the fact that Hawk is checking up on her, that he is, thinking about, well, everything. One thing I couldn't help, we're watching Michael Horst, the great actor who plays Hawk. He I'm pretty sure does not dye his hair, and the one thing we're looking at Hawk, we're looking at Sarah, we're in the house where we saw Bob so much, and it's kind of like, do they all go to the same hairstylist?
Hey, now.
I'm kind of joking.
Yeah, I hope you're entirely joking.
But Hawk and Sarah and Mr. C.
Yes.
Well, it's a similar hairstyle. I don't know if it means anything. Maybe it doesn't.
Boy, I want to hear from any listeners who really think Hawk and Mr. C are rocking the same look.
But did I forget to mention that Supercuts is now sponsoring the podcast?
Oh boy, that'd be great. No Patreon, all Supercuts. A powerful scene. Sarah, when she says that it's a GD terrible story line, and she's acting, I don't know how anybody would react it's unfathomable. I can't fathom what anybody would react who's been through what Sarah has been through and now spent what we imagine is 25 years drinking and suffering.
Yeah.
And with an incredible loss that she's had. But it was still a bit unnerving to see such fire in her, to see such anger in her. Well, and just incredible acting. I mean, we can't say that. I need more adjectives to other than incredible, brilliant.
No, she's
committed.
Wonderful. She's wonderful, and there is a sense of just sort of like, with her, she's a little dismissive of him because.
Oh, I thought she was totally dismissive.
Well, why wouldn't she be? And not that Hawk isn't a great guy. We love Hawk, but no one could help her before, and no one helped her.
That's what's weird, because you just mentioned it a second ago. There was this scene after Leland had died, where, as an audience, we were at least led to believe that Cooper was able to say some comforting words. Mm-hmm. We saw her, admittedly, it was only in that wake scene.
3 days later
scene, exactly right, where she had Eileen Hayward sitting next to her. She had actually Audrey Horne sitting next to her and trying to comfort her. And so, obviously, her appearance in the final episode of the series, where she's with Dr. Jacoby, you thought maybe Dr. Jacoby was helping her, but then, she had that message, I'm in the lodge with Agent Cooper. Maybe that should have been a sign that she couldn't be helped, but it's just my emotions, Mm-hmm. One thing that I love from almost every TV show is when it can not just make me laugh, not just get me engaged, but get me emotionally tied to it.
Oh, yeah.
And these Sarah Palmer scenes really did. So,
well, Bubba, I have one last question for you.
Let's hear it.
If you're Hawk, who would you choose, Sarah or Margaret, the log lady?
Oh boy!
You don't have to think
Listeners,
about her now.
That's Mork. Say your Twitter handle so I don't get all the hate.
At Extraordinary, people. I don't look. You don't need to think about it, but I guarantee you, Hawk is thinking about that on his drive home.
Poor Hawk. Whatever happened to Shapiro there at the community college he was writing those poems for?
Oh, that is true.
So let's get to the
Jessica Shapiro.
I actually think it might have been Diane Shapiro.
Oh, okay,
another Diane. Twin Dianes here on the show. Huh. Let's get to Carl Rod. So I was talking about emotions in the scene. I love Harry Dean Stanton, your drinking buddy. Listen to those the Return podcast to hear that story, listeners. But on a lot of these scenes that I didn't like, I couldn't feel any emotion, and so I think I guess it's an okay slice of life. But I almost felt nothing for this. Hey, don't donate blood scene between Harry Dean Stanton, aka Carl Rod, and this new character who wants to give blood. Do you want to say anything about it? Did you feel anything about this scene? What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there was a little bit of double L language Lynch going on for sure. I think what I took away from it, and it could have been conveyed, I think, a little quicker, but I do like the fact, Carl Rod is not just the caretaker of the trailer park, but also maybe of its people, also maybe of the town. He had an experience many, many years ago, like the log lady.
Right, according to the secret history of Twin Peaks, he had a major rig / log lady disappearance in those ghost woods out beside Twin Peaks. But he has transformed himself. We're going to talk a bit about how Ben Horne has transformed over these 25 years. The Carl Rod we met in Fire Walk with Me, now admittedly he wasn't in much, but you didn't think that he would be kind of the caretaker of the community. Mm-hmm. 25 years later, he's helping Shelley. He's helping this guy.
Right.
He was the one who approached the poor woman whose child died in the hit and run. Mm-hmm. And so Carl Rod has become this warm community member.
Right.
It really wasn't enough to make me engage with the scene much, or even if I was supposed to take anything from it. Did you take anything from it? Do you in any way feel this is really tied to the plot, or is it just a slice of life? Did Lynch love these two guys and want to have them in a scene?
Yeah,
any thoughts?
I don't think there's any, direct or, grand impact on anything else that we're seeing. But I think the idea of, Twin Peaks and, as a place where, people are extra, friendly and kind to each other because of the darkness in the woods, I'm always going to be on board with that. So it took a little too long to, remind us of that maybe, but I don't mind being reminded of it. Obviously the town has changed as when we cut to poor Miriam lying in the hospital
I'm so glad Miriam is alive.
Absolutely.
Richard Horne, I think every viewer, I was just saying about how maybe the return hasn't built as much as the original series had over the same amount of time. The original series has made us hate Richard Horne. The fact that this jerk tried but did not kill Miriam, who we just met that brief time in the diner, seems so nice. We're just seeing her. We're going to later find out that Ben Horne's going to, do the right thing, I guess.
Right.
Even though it isn't really his financial responsibility, but he feels one because of this bad grandchild and the community. It's good to see her. We needed some after that real tough episode, which had Richard Horne being so terrible. It's nice to see there maybe is some hope for some of these people.
Yeah. So definitely nice to see her still alive and kicking. And then speaking of the family Horne.
Yeah. Richard Beymer, the wonderful actor who plays Ben Horne. I didn't say it enough when we were doing our Twin Peaks Minutes reviews of the original series. He was a great actor in the original series. I think he's really great in the return. Why isn't this guy acting more? I mean, yes, okay, he's older, and maybe there are less parts for somebody who's older like Richard Beymer.
I thought he had done a fair amount in theater. I could be wrong.
Okay, fair enough. But I'm saying, why aren't movie and TV directors saying, okay, we need somebody older to carry dramatic weight? He's great. He is just incredible.
Yeah.
I liked this scene a lot. I was happy to see it. I had mentioned before how I was tough on the police department many times. Andy's willing to let a guy whose truck was involved in a child hit-and-run death, meet me later on this road. Mm-hmm. Hawk hears a very disturbing sound coming from Sarah Palmer's kitchen. He's like, well, if you need anything, you can come to me.
Right.
Here, we see the sheriff's department has moved forward. Mm-hmm. They know it's Richard Horne who did it. And to be honest, the real goal for Sheriff Frank Truman is really just to make sure these medical bills get covered. That's really the point of this scene. And to maybe find out if Ben knows where Richard is. But I'm glad the police force is being a successful unit at times here at Twin Peaks.
Right. They're definitely doing something. One thing that's curious about this scene is, Ben doesn't bring up. I mean, he hears, and maybe if he knows what happened to the little boy, he knows what happened to Miriam. It's not going to make things any better or worse for Richard, but why not bring up what happened with Sylvia, when Richard attacked her?
Yeah, I kind of thought about that too, but how about this? Why not bring up, if Audrey is the mother, why not bring up Audrey? He mentions that Richard never had a father, and theoretically that causes Ben to remember his love of his own father, who gave him that great bike.
Yep.
But those are minor things that I thought about while still just really enjoying the scene.
Yeah, and there is a sense of, in contrast to the original series where, I mean, that that Ben Horne was on top of the world. He definitely slipped up. He ended up in the slammer a couple of times. He almost had an awful relationship with his own daughter at one of his side businesses, but it seems like he's paying for all that stuff now. He's divorced from his wife. The sins of the father
are coming back to the children, and he's suffered. He's not living a happy life now. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot different than the life he used to lead so many years ago. And
you got to pay your penance. You say it's a shame in some ways. I liked the old Ben, as you could like dastardly characters who were well written and well performed. But I also like the new Ben just as well. So. Yes, he's paying for it, but I enjoyed it a lot. Let's get to the plot check of this scene. The infamous, let's track it. It went from Good Coop / Dale Cooper's pocket through the electric outlet to Jade's car, to the mailbox, to Beverly.
2 rides. Jade gave 2 rides.
She gave 1 key, 2 rides. To Beverly, to Ben, and now it's in Frank Truman's hand. This scene, boy, I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. But when Ben says...
He'll give it to him?
Give this to Harry, and then Frank says, yeah, I'll give it to him. I would really love to see Michael Ontkeen. He's not on the cast list. There's a chance that he won't be in it. But this is giving me possibly false hope. That's one thing I really want. Interesting that Frank Truman plays it so close to the vest about, alarm bells should be going off for Frank Truman about, wait a minute, this key suddenly just showed up?
Right. And, he mentions that it's so strange, there's some things about Agent Cooper that recently came up. He says that, but at the same time, they're not really treating the key, like evidence. The fact that it just arrived in the mail. Well,
right.
Gosh, should we? Is there? I don't know. Postal inspectors listening, please tell us on Facebook or Twitter. But
even in the UK, we had that wonderful iTunes review
Lost
from our
Water.
friends.
This is Lost Water. This is right up your alley. We need you to crack the case. Could they find out where the key had been sent from?
Right.
Because you would think if you're looking into this case, it's like, well, gosh, mate. Anyway, I think we're all on the same page here. So Ben does go on to have a bit of a rosebud moment with his multicolored bicycles or multicolored bicycle. God bless him.
Yeah, we saw Ben's father in old what looked like 8mm film in the original series.
Right.
He was building a hotel, couldn't afford a new bike.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Horns have owned a lot of property for a very long time in this town. But you know what they say about rich people.
What do they say? Oh, there we go. There go all our rich listeners who are going to pay these Patreon accounts we might set up. Who knows?
Well, no more rich listeners going to Supercuts, tonight's sponsor. Boy, are they super. So we hear this story, and it doesn't...
Did it emotionally touch you? This old man recollecting about the rosebud moment, the happier time in his life?
I can't say, just because of the nature of it. I mean, this is coming off after. Okay, so your grandson is a murdering jerk. Agent Cooper's in trouble. With this key. Harry's got cancer. Do we know exactly what Harry has?
They have not officially said that.
Harry's in the hospital, and then your bicycle, and Ashley Judd's, Beverly's husband is dying from cancer too. So it just seems like okay.
I didn't feel the way you did, Mork. I did feel the remorse and spoiler alerts for Citizen Kane. I think that's what Citizen Kane isn't like, oh boy, this is a great time. Now let me remember this sled.
Sure,
he lived a rough life too, and he was the exact same moment.
Right,
and so it was like simpler time.
Was Ashley Judd in Citizen Kane?
Oh my Lord, we are spoiling everything and making some really corny jokes, in my opinion. Somebody who...
These are the jokes, people.
Right, yeah, we've had corny jokes every episode. These episodes might seem similar. Speaking of somebody who has a very similar show, similar theme, Dr. Amp. Did you get anything new from this appearance of Dr. Amp, Mork? Anything you want to feel about this appearance of Dr. Amp? And Nadine appreciating Dr. Amp, which I believe we've now had 3 times.
Right, and we've seen the ad now twice, at least twice. I think the thing with Dr. Amp that does jump out is, and also, I mean, on his lapels, you can see a lightning bolt. Also, the way that he says electricity, that's something that, it's been in the air, it's been in the ether for a while, but I don't think we really need to focus too much on his mail order business, but I could be wrong.
It's funny you say we've seen it twice. I hope there's some super fans out there who can compare and contrast the two and see if maybe the commercials changed a bit. This is like I've mentioned a couple of times in this podcast already, where I'm trying to find something to give me a new hook. Mm-hmm. If the show hasn't, for me, if you love it, hey, disagree with us. Once again, we love dissenting opinions, but for me, there was nothing new here. So I'm trying to find a new hook. Is there something different between Dr. Amp's rant and Dr. Amp's rant? It leads into another scene of people just as angry. Audrey Horne. This was a big one you were tough on, Mork. A lot of people were tough on.
Sure.
People always said, we don't want nostalgia. We don't want nostalgia. Well, this is what non-nostalgia, recreating, this is what it gives you.
Well,
let's hear it. How did you feel about this scene in short declarative sentences?
Okay, well, I'll do my best. The theory that this is a coma or a dream of hers is one that I hope is true, because when I first met Audrey Horne so many years ago, I never would have wanted her to end up like this.
You never would have wanted it, but how do you feel about the actual scene? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Do you intrigued by it? Bored by it?
To remove the reintroduction of Audrey, who is in many ways, one of the centerpieces of especially the first season of the show. That in and of itself is a big deal. We're getting to know where she is. Now, in terms of how this is playing out, I did not enjoy it. It looks like Ike the Spike's older brother got lucky and married Audrey, so God bless him. But
well, some people have put up some screen caps, and I think there is more than a passing resemblance. That Audrey's husband, Charlie, looks like the guy who was in the photo of Mr. C in the Glass Box Lounge. The photo is Mr. C talking to somebody there in the Glass Box Lounge. It really does kind of look like Charlie. But maybe all these theories that, hey, this is a dream, hey, this is a sham, hey, Charlie is Audrey's psychiatrist. I think all of these theories are coming up for people trying to find a way to enjoy a scene they really didn't like.
Yeah.
And this is a tough scene to like. I think there's maybe a bit of humor in it that we're being thrown so many names, like Billy, the guy who Bing was looking for a couple of days ago, and Tina and Chuck, and of course here's the husband, Charlie. But this is just a hard scene to enjoy. I've sung Lynch's praises to high heaven for that supermarket scene. This scene with 2 people in a room not moving, you want to do this in a stage play where, okay, for all this time you're going to sit at the desk, you're going to stand here and not move. This is just tough, and I hope, people, if you loved it, I don't want to say you're wrong to love it. I want you to write us on our Facebook and tell us why you loved it, because I did get a jolt from seeing Audrey. I think Sherilyn Fenn looks great. I think it was we've wanted to see her. I did want to see her. Her cursing, I didn't enjoy, but I do. Audrey was always feisty in the old show.
She was feisty, but she was cool. And she didn't really, unless she was playing up to her dad, unless she was sort of playing the spoiled little rich girl, or the poor little rich girl, rather, to her dad, when you saw her with, her classmates, who she didn't spend, too much time doing, when you saw her with Agent Cooper, she was calm and collected, and she was in charge. And here she's just kind of yelling and screaming and unhinged.
Right. I would say there were moments where I kind of like the maybe it's deadpan humor that Charlie's giving off about, here's his wife yelling at him hysterical, and he's like, but look at this paperwork. It's like, there's a bit of an attempt at humor there. It just listeners, hopefully it was different from you. I hope every listener loved this scene. For me, it didn't feel like it worked.
Yeah, and also, I as you know, Bubba, I am no Lorenzo Lamas, but man, I should have taken a shot at Audrey many years ago when I had a chance, because I think I think I'm a better catch than Charlie. I'm just going to go out there and say it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Listeners, write us and let us know what you think. Is Mork a better catch than Charlie?
Mork or Charlie? And to be fair, I
will say no comment. I will stay out of this one.
I have no sweater vest. So, yeah, I just didn't enjoy it, and I hope if we see her again that she's going to be a little bit more actively involved, and maybe she'll jar Coop out of something. I don't know.
Let me go to, once again, behind-the-scenes rumors. There was a point when Sherilyn Fenn wasn't going to be in Twin Peaks: The Return. Like, it was a last-minute kind of make-or-break deal for Sherilyn Fenn to appear. And so maybe one of the reasons why, here I'm attacking, this is like student film blocking of this scene. Maybe it's because
they had one day.
Right, they had one day for her, and they wanted to give her something meaty, and so they kind of wrote a scene real quick for us not knowing these characters.
And no mention of her mother being attacked by her son. Like
of what we assume is her son.
Oh, I assume, yeah. I mean, I don't know, but I'm definitely, I'm definitely assuming. This is kind of.
You only gave it 3 out of 10, so
yeah, and it does sort of remind me of many years ago, and not to keep jumping back, but come on, people, it's part of why we're here. When all of the drama you're talking about the drama between that happened this past year or so in terms of why maybe she didn't have a bigger part or maybe there was some rancor,
right?
Not dissimilar from when Laura Flynn Boyle had some similar issues, and then sort of got sort of relegated to the drama between Mrs. Hayward and Ben Horne, that whole thing, and sort of really turning her into a child. Maybe this is their way of I don't know what. I hope they're not that petty, but I just don't get the scene.
Well, let's say this again. Say 3 parts from now, or say by part 18, we know all these people they're referring to, and we've become invested in that storyline about Billy and Audrey and Charles and Chuck and Tina. Is it going to retroactively make you enjoy this scene?
No, but it might.
It really going to?
It might make me retroactively like Evelyn Marsh.
Revenge for Evelyn.
The circle is broken.
Revenge, Evelyn.
Oh, man.
All right, so Twin Peaks, not every episode, but it feels like every part ends in the Roadhouse. And when I said I had a hard time connecting emotionally or kind of even interest-wise in the Carl Rod Don't Give Blood scene, these scenes, I've mentioned it. People, were coming up with theories about the Audrey scene, about, maybe she's in a coma, maybe she's patient, because it's like the show isn't giving us much because we don't know the people they're talking about, and it's tough to care. These scenes, when it's only people we've never seen before at the Roadhouse, it's tough for me to care. It's tough for me to enjoy this.
Sure.
This.
There's been very, very, very few connections made here. I mean,
right,
we saw Shelley and Red,
right,
briefly, and then we've now seen them one more time. We saw James. We saw Shelley.
We're meeting new characters.
We saw Richard, and then we saw. But that's kind of it.
Otherwise,
right, but all strangers.
All strangers who we never see again, and who we see once, and I'm assuming we'll never see again. Maybe this is a commentary about, because here's another people involved in some sort of soap opera dynamics. They're talking about Clark and Mary,
Invitation to Love,
and
indeed.
Trick. Right. So maybe this in Angela, like maybe this is a wry commentary on that. Maybe Lynch is trying to kind of send up, and Frost. I don't want to leave Frost out of this if he's involved in the scene too. Maybe they're kind of send up the soap opera conventions, but that may be what they're trying to do. It doesn't necessarily, maybe I'm understanding what they're trying to do. I'm certainly not honestly enjoying these one-off scenes.
Well, and the one thing that I was thinking a little bit about during this thing. And the only thing that really kept me captivated was, is it possible that one of the band members, and there's 3 of them, stole James's guitar?
The Chromatics. You're saying from just you and I days, James had to sell it after he had his accident?
Maybe he pawned it. Maybe they stole it. Maybe he brought it here in part 1 and just left it behind. I don't know. But I was thinking about that mainly during this.
How about this? I've seen some people argue this, so I'm trying to give the other side here. People are always saying, this is a bit like life. Life doesn't give you resolution. Life throws things at you. Sometimes you're at a table with people talking about stuff you don't know. And so is that make it art-worthy that it's lifelike? Does that make it enjoyable because it's true to life maybe in some way? I'm trying to be Mork, I've done it enough. You give the pro argument for this scene.
It ends.
Oh, my God.
No, it's tough.
Carry that weight.
Well, look, they're having this conversation, and then a crazy person shows up.
Their friend Trick. What do you mean, a crazy person?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Trick almost got run off the road, possibly by Richard Horne. People are saying maybe Richard Horne, maybe Mr. C. Once again, people are coming up with ways to get invested in this scene, because maybe the scene isn't giving them that investment. Boy, I don't want to end like that. I know it's an episode we were both real tough on. Obviously, some of our listeners were real tough on. We need the other side. We need you to, if you don't lie, but if you loved it, if you loved this final scene and saw value in it, you may not convince us, but we want to hear that you heard value in it and hear somebody defend it. Everybody's opinion is welcome. I think I said it earlier. We want to be the podcast for everybody. Everybody who can watch a part and be incredibly frustrated, and the people who watch the same part and love it, love it, love it. So everybody, boy, we keep saying it, facebook.com/double P podcast. That's the word double, the single letter P, the word podcast, plural. We currently don't have ads or Patreon. We're doing it for you because we love interacting with you loyal listeners. Thank you so much. Any closing thoughts, Mork, as we've rounded out 2/3 of Twin Peaks: The Return?
No, I mean, look, hey, we were tough on this episode, on this part, excuse me, but I'm still as excited as I've been for the next 6. So, looking forward to seeing you next time, Bubba.
Yeah, and I wasn't able to be on part 11. I loved part 11. If you asked me part 11, hey, you got 7 more hours of this, that would have been great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'll, just straight up honesty, I've listened to, I don't want to call any other Twin Peaks podcasts out, but this was way back after I think it was either their review of parts 3 and 4 or part 5. At the beginning of this podcast, the hosts were talking about stuff, yeah, I like this. Oh, there were parts of this episode that I didn't enjoy, but da-da-da-da-da. And so I listened to the whole podcast. And you know what? They never said the parts they didn't enjoy because, hey, it's their show. They want to be all, they want to only talk about but I kind of thought, why aren't you mentioned that you had troubles with some bits of this episode. Why, you're not going to tell me?
Right.
Why are you holding back? You're afraid to tell me? But everybody can do what they want to do. We're going to keep being here for you listeners because you've been there for us. Thank you so much.
Have a great night. And, Bubba, I'm going to keep being here for you. I'm not leaving.
Let me tell you, if I could get Charlie to go. So that's it. We'll see you next time on Twin Peaks: The Gifted.
And the Damned.
Did.
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 And the Damned.
Did.